Kia ora and welcome to this presentation on the future of learning. Learning is transitioning into a very, very different space and place compared to what we had just at the end of last century. Last century, what most people required was for people to go to a workplace, do as they were told, not show much initiative, and simply get on with the jobs that they were given by their line manager. That has changed dramatically now, and what we're now starting to see is that 20% of people who used to sort of be required to be capable young people who could come into the workforce and tell others, learn, build capability over periods of time and instruct others what to do. That 20% has now gone to 80%. And the 80% of people that worked in factory type of work where it was almost dictated on a day-to-day basis what you did and how you did that and how well you had done that or not, that shift has meant that schooling, with its purpose for preparing young people for the world they're going into, has transitioned significantly. And so we've gone from a 20-80 to an 80-20. 80% at least of our young people now need to be competent, capable, lifelong learners that can actually communicate really effectively with each other. So, what are the implications of this in terms of teaching? Is teaching still the same thing, or is it changing? Or does it need to change? So, what we've been doing when we've been looking at this future of learning is asking ourselves, what are the new capability sets? And what we've developed over time with schools across different countries and in different ethos, different cultures, different status, etc. What we've learnt is that there are 4 infrastructural domains and there are 4 pedagogical domains. Now, when we say infrastructure, we don't mean buildings and architectures, etc., but we need architecture that's going to surround the school's capability to actually create young people and develop young people into being lifelong learners. And not just lifelong learners in terms of remembering things, but lifelong learners being able to create things. Creativity now sits at the nexus of most of the workplace jobs that are coming up in this century. And that's a huge transition from last century when we asked most people not to overthink things and not to actually come up with jolly good ideas. Now it's all about the jolly good ideas. So, what are those 4 infrastructural elements and what are those 4 pedagogical elements? The first infrastructural element is making sure that we have technology available to young people, and not just available to them, but they need to be competent in using it. There's a grand assumption out there that young people intuitively know how to use technology to learn, and I'm afraid it's just not true. The emperor literally has no clothes on here whatsoever. Young people need to be educated, need to be given the capability sets and develop the capability sets to manage technology, work with technology, know which bit of technology to go to depending on what they're trying to achieve in their learning cycle. So technology for learning is a very different thing for technology for entertainment. It's all very well being able to post up to YouTube and post up to Facebook and to Instagram, etc. That's really easy. Right? It doesn't take much. It looks impressive, but it doesn't take much. But to learn with technology, that's a different ball game altogether. So there's one of our infrastructural elements. Our second infrastructural element is the ability to work through research processes in order to do the learning. In other words, we need to have young people who know how to access, possibly using technology, but not always, access information that is reliable, credible and usable for them at a level that they can understand. And so researching, finding out where to go to, who to go to, is a very critical part of the infrastructural elements. And so once again, our second thing here is our second domain in the infrastructural world is making sure our young people have the capability to carry out research. Our third capability set in the infrastructural space is making sure that assessment drives learning. It's not a sum of the learning, it drives learning. Every time we give inspiration to young people, we talk to them, they show us their work, we go, Have you thought, what about this? What sort of question would you ask here? That's the sort of thing we want young people to be experiencing. Our role as educators is to push them further. Okay? It's not just to remember a task or remember an object or remember a statement or remember a paragraph. It's actually about doing something with that now. So the end game really is no longer about remembering, it's all about building, creating, applying, understanding, innovating, being ingenious with that. So assessment for learning needs to drive that whole process, and it's a continual process of assessment. Our fourth infrastructural element is ensuring that we have environments that are conducive to learning and also replicate as much as we possibly can do what the workplaces are these young people go to and the social places these young people are going to go into. Our society is far more collaborative now, okay, in our workplace and in our social place. And so what we need to make sure is that we can represent that as best we possibly can. So innovative learning environments may look like this for some people, this for other people, this for other people. Your school will develop its innovative learning environments in the way, shape and form it can and what it can afford. But what these innovative learning centres, schools, classrooms, buildings actually require in order to actually make the use of those environments for learning, we have to have young people who have the competencies to do that. They've got to be able to be self-managers. And to self-manage, young people need to have a sense of who they are. Right? They need to be able to think. They need to be able to ask themselves questions. They need to understand their self-talk. So the competencies are an absolutely essential element. And so straight away what we've done now is we're going into the pedagogical elements. And the first pedagogical element that we're looking at is this notion of building competency. And competencies, we've mapped the competencies conceptually. So conceptually means that there's no context, so that it can be used in any school, anywhere in the world. And you just adapt the context that's appropriate to your learners' experiences. So the competencies are having a sense of identity, culturally, personally, respectfully, all those aspects of who we are as a person. And what does that mean? What does that mean to be respectful of others? What does it mean to be respectful of self? Are we aware of our self-talk? And in many cases, our young people are not aware of their self-talk to self. And we need to make sure they understand that, because their self-talk grows who they become. You know, when we look in the mirror, we tend to be negative about what we see back. None of us like doing what we're doing right now, videoing ourselves. All right? No one likes that. Right? But at the same time, we have to have a sense of self, a positive sense of self, a growth sense of self, to follow Carol's work around growth mindset. So identity is very important. Out of identity, once you have a bit of a sense of identity, then we can start talking about thinking and questioning. Because thinking is that self-talk again. Questioning is about questioning that self-talk and asking ourselves, is this good self-talk? Is it negative self-talk? What sort of questions can we ask ourselves to drive our understanding deeper? So questioning is a really big gig when it comes to working with young people. We need to teach them how to question. Right? There's different types of questioning. You know, Socratic questioning, there's open questions, closed questions. You know, we've got a whole raft of different types of questions we can ask. And those question stems need to be on the walls of every room that a learner enters every single day. They need to be looking at those, and they're not just for the learners, they're also for the educator learners. Because educators coming in, we need to pick those off the wall to ask those questions to the learners in our care. So thinking and questioning is absolutely critical. What we have then is a sense of who we are, the ability to be conscious of our thinking and our self-talk and the questions we're asking ourselves, and that allows us to much better manage self. Because if we want this thing called agency, and we see a lot of work around at the moment talking about agency, if you want to be agentic, you have to have the competencies. They have to be gifted to young people. So we need to spend time working on the competencies. And that's our first number one pedagogical role at the moment, is to develop the competencies in every single learner. You can go and have a look at the work we've produced called Global Competence. And we've mapped each of these competencies. So managing self is critical. Collaborating is also critical. It's critical in the social place, the play space, the workspace. We need to be really good collaborators. We need to listen to others, take in what they have to say, and then add to that and contribute to that with confidence. And finally, our fifth competence is cultural competency, because I don't think there's a place in the world now where we're not in a multicultural competency sort of world continually. Most of the schools now are multicultural environments, and we need to build on this. So the competencies are absolutely critical to that process. Once they've got competencies, then we can start talking about learner agency. But before we go to learner agency just yet, we've got to actually look up and go, right, the other thing we need to make sure that our young people understand is how to learn. We've been telling them what to learn for hundreds of years, but we've rarely ever stepped out and said, okay, we're going to teach you, build some capability around how to learn. Because learning is a process. When you had to just remember, it was a very simple process. But now you've got to take that knowledge and interrogate it with good questions to build understanding. Then you've got to take that understanding and possibly interrogate that and go and build some more knowledge, and then come back to that understanding again, and then build more knowledge, question, build more knowledge, till we get to the point where we're starting to get a framework, an architecture, a conceptual frame around what it is we're wanting to understand. And why do we want to understand? We want to understand because you can only take understanding further to being innovative, coming up with clever, rich, open, fertile ideas, new concepts. And that's what the world is around today. It's a wonderful place. It's no longer about memorizing things, because we've got phones now that can do that much better than we'll ever do, regardless of age. All right? So what we have to look at is how do we leverage that understanding, those ideas and concepts, to be innovative? And innovation is about coming up with the jolly clever idea that sets the world alight. And someone goes, why did we think of this? And how did we miss this? So innovation is that space. All right? And then we go, well, what does that look like in terms of a product, a system, an environment? What do they look like? So we need to build on our competencies, our ability to know how to learn in order to be agentic, in order to have agency over our world. And that's true for adults as it is for our young people. We're all in the same space now. The fourth element in the pedagogical space is this notion of building conceptual frames of understanding. And to do that, we need to move away from a thematic curriculum into a conceptual curriculum. And we're in the final stages at the moment of completing the conceptual curriculum for the traditional subjects, so to speak, or learning domains as we're tending to call them these days. And once again, we're sticking with the 7 standard sort of learning domains right across the world for now. But schools are experimenting by merging maths and science into a single space. And for younger people, this is a good thing. Right through to sort of year 1, through to year 9, 10, this is a good thing. Because the world is not boxed into little spaces. You know, it's integrated. It's integral to everything we do. So this notion of using concepts means that we can get through work much quicker. Units of work that lasted 3, 5, 10 weeks sometimes, whole term. You know, do we really need that long? And what is the outcome we actually want? What a conceptual curriculum does is identify very specifically what the relationship is between the variables within that particular domain, whether it be maths or science or drama or English, whatever, maths, science, anyone. So what we need to be able to do now is rethink the process forward and how we do that. How do we take our 4 infrastructural elements and our 4 pedagogical elements and make that change? It's possible, but I'll tell you right now, it takes between 3 to 5 years to make that shift. And we've been working with schools around the world in terms of actually developing capability sets around this. And what we want to do now is build that capability set into a framework that we can work with you for the next 3 to 5 years and build infrastructure over time. Generally speaking, we meet 4 times a year, come and speak with you. We do a Skype session in between those 4 times just to see how things are going, but it will take you 3 to 5 years to create that capability set. So, there we have it, the future of learning. Learning is central to everything. Remembering, yes, we have to do some remembering, but the focus now is on developing learner capability so young people can actually merge into society successfully, whether that's working for someone or building, creating and crafting their own world. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much and all the very best with your journey. And if you need to get in touch with us, you can just email mark@work.co.nz, or you can go to www.marktreadwell.com and download the whole book of The Future of Learning. Okay, it's a PDF, and in there's more videos to watch and more resource there, 220 pages worth, so enjoy that too. Right, thank you very much for your time and all the very best with your journey. Cheers.